Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Questions About Music. What is Questions About Music? Question About Music is the colloquium series, a series of conversation here at the Department of Music at the University of Alberta. And like any of these kind of series of conversation, we have invited guests. I'll introduce my guests in a second. But something that we do differently from other series like this is that we don't invite guests to give a formal paper presentation or a long talk, but we rather have a conversation with them, to know our guests a little bit better. There is both an online audience and an in-person audience, and we very often take on board what people want us to talk about. So if there is someone that you'd like us to invite, so someone you'd like to have here for us to have a conversation with, an artist that you're very passionate about, a new album that you are thinking about all the time, we could have conversation about that, a score, a piece of music. Nothing is really not suitable for this kind of platform. So if you have ideas, graduate students, undergraduate students, people from the broader Edmonton community interested in music, everyone is welcome to chip in and say what they would like us to discuss next. Here now, today, my name is Fabio Morabito. I'm a musicologist here at the University of Alberta, and I'm joined by our much beloved Angela Schroeder, who is director of band, is also the director of the program of band conducting. Do a bunch of things to do with conducting and bands in our department. And I'm also joined by Allison Balcetis, who is a saxophonist. And the title of this particular Questions About Music is Your Professor Journey. So it's really an opportunity to know these people a bit better, to know about where they started, how they got here. We do once a year a session like this. Last year we had our two professors of piano. This year we'll start with Angela and Allison. So perhaps we could get us maybe going, Angela, if I ask you, where did your musical journey start? And where are you from? What brought you to be interested in music and to study music?
Sure. So I'm an Alberta success story. I grew up in Calgary, Alberta, and I started piano lessons as a young child at age 5.
Piano?
Piano, yeah. So piano was my first instrument. Apparently I showed talent for it. I saw very little evidence of that for a long, long time. I have two sisters, one older, one younger, and so we all were put in piano lessons, but both of my sisters were allowed to quit, and I was not allowed to quit.
By your parents?
By my mother, yes.
All right.
My mom, when she was pregnant with me, she had always wanted to have piano lessons, and her family could never afford a piano. So she was pregnant with me, and my dad bought her a piano when she was pregnant with me, and she started lessons when I was in utero. And she says, that must be why you're a musician, because she was prolific, not at all. But she always she wished that she had had the opportunities to be a musician and study when she was younger. And so I think she saw it in me and kind of pushed the issue because she saw that I actually understood and had perceived talent in me. I liked to sing a lot at the time too, sang in our school choir, played guitar in elementary school. Just everything musical seemed to click for me. But never ever saw myself taking it that seriously. I got into junior high school band and picked up the trumpet. And I'm sure as many of you, I was the best. And was celebrated by all of my teachers. Every band teacher I had kind of put me wherever they needed me. I got sent to the percussion section to tune the timpani. I took home a snare drum because I had good rhythm, and played trumpet, played piano. I think I even tried a little bit of euphonium back then as well, but it was too big, and only the boys played it. Even the trumpet, I was the only girl trumpet player. And I think that's important to note too, because I think a lot of those things have changed over the years, but that was actually in my mind. I didn't want to be the only girl in the brass section, but I couldn't make a sound on a clarinet, and to play saxophone, you had to play clarinet. So I might have been a saxophone player, but for my embouchure. So I played trumpet all the way through and then went through to high school. And my mom made me a deal on the piano. If I took piano through grade 8 Royal Conservatory, she would let me quit. So what happened was I got to grade 8 Royal Conservatory, and then I didn't want to quit. Then I thought, okay, I'll stick with it because I started to sound pretty good. And it was something that my peers at school, if I sat down at the piano, I kind of got a little bit of support and people saying, wow, you're really good at what you do. And I think that kind of pushed me forward to keep doing that all the way through high school.
So a positive environment, I hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you get that positive feedback, my older sister who had quit, I used to kind of do like jokes on the piano for her. I would play Peanuts songs and then go into like some crazy hymn. And then we go back to like a Christmas carol or whatever and just kind of trying to make her laugh while I played the piano. And so the approval of my older sister probably played into sticking with it a little bit. And I played pop songs. As soon as you could go and buy sheet music, probably in junior high school, I would buy the latest Madonna song and learn it on the piano, and Whitney Houston and Chicago. And so when I could play popular music too, that made an impact as well. That's what people wanted to hear. They didn't want to hear my Mozart sonata. They wanted to hear, you know, "You're the Inspiration." That was like my song. I played it for everybody. So, yeah.
Any weddings? Any kind of?
Oh, that came later.
All right, we'll get
later.
We'll get to that later. But were you also singing, kind of like when you say like the Madonna, the Whitney Houston, or just the instrumental?
Yes, but not.
Oh, come on.
Good.
This is a safe space.
I would sing myself to sleep, you know, to little ballads or whatever. I was very much a closet diva, for sure.
Join the club.
Yeah.
Okay then.
Right. Maybe we could go to Allison and tell us where you started your musical journey, what got you into it.
Sure.
Where?
I also had a really supportive atmosphere growing up. My family is, everyone in my family is musical, though not professionally. My dad plays accordion and ukulele, but at the time, accordion only. And my mom was like a former saxophonist in high school who played piano. And I have one older sister, 4 years older, who ended up picking saxophone. So, so my young childhood was spent going to lots of concerts. My family was like a big jazz family. We would go to lots of jazz concerts. And my dad sang in the church choir. And then eventually it was time to, like, it was just like, I don't even remember choosing to be in band. It was gonna happen. And so I picked saxophone. And I guess because my older sister played it and my mom had played it. And once I did that, I had in the house a talented, like, older person playing the same instrument. My family, my dad, my sister, and I, once I could like play a couple notes, we would play at the major holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving in the nursing home where my mom's parents eventually both ended up. So like most major holidays were in the nursing home playing at lunchtime for everyone in the nursing home. So like in 5th grade, I was like giving little public performances.
How old were you? Sorry,
I don't know. How old is anyone in 5th grade?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm
10.
not.
10? Yeah,
Right.
10, yeah. And so like playing, and what it would be was like polkas, because my dad was playing accordion. So polkas, some old show tunes, and like like the easier jazz standards with like no improvisation, but just like playing the tops and like the heads. The tops. And like maybe my dad would improvise, but I wasn't ready yet. So that was the home. We went to concerts, we gave little concerts. And then band was where like, yeah, I got some early recognition. I had an in-house mentor, my sister. We would like go busking during,
Oh, wow.
during the summers. Like my hometown, Omaha, Nebraska, hosts the College World Series of baseball, where all the colleges go to do this like baseball tournament. And so in the summer we would busk. And you know, this is like when I was in junior high and early high school. My sister was just about to leave the house. And so I needed to be good enough to play with her. And so she was like my first impetus to like get good fast beyond my peers, you know. And then in band in high school, I went to a nice high school in that it was like a nice suburban high school, so well-funded, which is, in the States, it's all based on your neighborhood, which is not fair, but is the case. And so it was happened to be a nice neighborhood, nice high school, lots of honor band opportunities. All the universities in Nebraska had an honor band. So I would go to multiple honor bands a year. And those were just like times to be special. And when you're told you're special, it feels nice.
It does, yeah.
So that was it. It's
How
sort
much older was your sister when?
4 years older.
Oh, right. That's
Yeah.
quite a bit of time, you know, especially in terms of musical
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And then is she playing the saxophone? Like,
She plays for fun, and she plays flute for fun too. But she's a psychologist now. She teaches psychology. Yeah.
excellent, yeah. And sort of, have you kept this habit of playing at home, like sort of like as a family?
Yeah. Still, when I visit, we break out the books. We have our, like the fake book, jazz fake books, or little collections of like Telemann duets. My sister and I will still play. So, yep, it's still a regular thing.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
what a lovely kind of like insight into this kind of like family, holidays, but also kind of like, how often would you make music at home? Like, maybe not holiday time.
Several times a year.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I would practice, when I was growing up, I would practice at home. So my sister would like probably needle me to like fix something, if I was like making a mistake. Also, I played piano. My dad taught me piano, even though he was accordionist. And so, he taught me how to like put my fingers on the keys and how to read music and that sort of thing. And I didn't like it either at the beginning, but he really made me stick with it. We didn't do RCM curriculum, but just whatever little early days books for piano. And so I've kept up playing piano a little bit, very poorly. My fingers are atrocious. If you were to watch like what my fingers currently do, but I'm so grateful that I can still kind of play piano.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This early, I wouldn't say fixation, but parents that say like do piano. Like,
yeah.
Why do you think that's the case? Like, was the piano kind of like seen as a respectful place to be?
I think a lot of people had pianos in their home.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And so rather than it just being furniture, it'd be nice if your kids play the instrument.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that's maybe the most natural thing, that there's more kids taking piano lessons than any other instrument.
Yeah. As a
even
very
in
tiny
violins.
person, right? You can sort of approach the instrument.
Yeah.
Maybe there are some instruments where there is a physical barrier. Your body has to be a certain size before you can pick up the euphonium. What do you think? Is there a bare minimum?
Maybe that, but also maybe, I don't know if there is something to do with the fact that, with the piano, maybe a small person can do also something that can come out and sound like you don't have, for example, tuning to worry about. Maybe something to do with that.
Yeah.
Very interesting. How about a person kind of like early in your journey, not necessarily early, but maybe you have a mentor or someone that you think shaped your journey, maybe not super early, like in this case your sister, but someone later on, a teacher or someone that you want to tell us about that you still think about when you think about your musical journey?
I feel like at every stage I kind of have one person. So elementary school, I was very shy to join. We did a whole production in the 5th grade, the history of rock and roll. And my teacher knew that I had good pitch and I could sing, and she thought that I should be doing a solo, but I didn't want to go to the auditions. An audition was terrifying. But she came up and she kind of put her arm around me and she's like, let's sing it together. And the pianist played and we both kind of sang, and then she just stopped singing and I kept singing. And she was this force of nature, this woman. She came into our very first music class. We never really had a good music teacher, but in 5th grade, Mrs. Snookle came in and she started her class and just yelled at us, Candyman! That's how we started. And we all were just like, and she did that like 3 times, and then Salty Dog, and she did that again, until we finally call and response with her. We figured it out, but it took.
Cool.
And she got us singing immediately, and we sang every class, and we played instruments all the time. And it was just exciting. Music class all of a sudden was a something. Before that, it was just lame. They put on like records and we had to square dance or whatever, and it was terrible, but we were then making music, right?
Wow.
I remember the moment that she was teaching us the lines and spaces. I'd been playing piano for like 4 or 5 years already, everybody, and it never clicked to me what that meant. Somehow I had figured out piano without understanding what I was even reading, and she taught me that. So Mrs. Snookle was the first. In junior high school, I had this really amazing band teacher who was probably unstable. but who latched on to me as her favorite student. And so she let me conduct. She let me play percussion whenever I wanted to. And this one moment, she wanted to give me the Student of the Month award, but my English teacher gave it to me and she cried, and I was like, it's fine. Like, get over yourself. This is when I started to realize, not all adults are totally stable. It's fine. But she celebrated what I could do in front of everybody and made me, like Allison said, when someone makes you feel special, then you tend to do more. My high school band teacher talked to my mom early on about why is she not taking trumpet lessons, why doesn't she own a trumpet, and got my mom involved in getting me into lessons. So I went to my very first trumpet lesson. I opened the door, and it was my band teacher at the door. I'm like, okay. He's like, hi. He lived with the trumpet player from the Calgary Philharmonic Orchestra. And he's like, you're going to the basement. I'm like,
Oh, funny.
okay, that was also a little creepy, but it ended up fine. And I started taking trumpet lessons in the basement of my band teacher's house. And then he led my mom to getting me my first trumpet, which showed up under a Christmas tree. With a caveat that I had been saving money from babysitting or whatever. And she said, if you could buy a trumpet for $800, would you do it? And I said, absolutely. So she got it for $1,200, and she said, but you're putting in $800 for your Christmas present. I was like, that's great, that's fine. And so having those people to kind of guide what could be at every stage, I think, and probably you all have the exact same story, right? There's someone who takes us and sees that in us and leads us forward.
Yeah.
So.
And people think about the responsibility that now you have for people ahead of you, people that don't know yet about some opportunities of what could be a path. It's interesting to remember what we got when we were younger, and so what we could do.
And even with all of that, I tell this story every year at the Honor Band, that it took someone coming from the university to my high school grade 12 band class to tell me I could study music. I had no idea that this was something you could do. And it was kind of that day that the light bulb clicked, that I'm like, I don't have to be an English major. This is great, because I didn't know what else I would study at university. And going to the university changed everything, right? That all of a sudden you were just going to music classes.
Oh, we're going to get to that in a second.
Yeah, I don't want to jump too soon, but that, again, you go through all of these things. I had finished in grade 12, I did my RCM grade 10 piano. I was pretty advanced, right? That's pretty strong. That's kind of what we expect for pianists to come here. And it hadn't occurred to me.
Wow.
No one had really
no one had
said.
told you. Yeah. So can you see how important it is to tell people, how good they are, and what they could do with their.
Yeah.
Because sometimes music job or music career or music study is not the most immediate. In some families, it's not something that people talk about. Maybe some people didn't even know that they could study music, at university. Yeah. But I'm curious to hear from Allison. A person, a mentor, or someone that shaped your journey.
Yeah, I'm going a little non-traditional route. A non-saxophonist was very important to me. Luigi Waits, he was a jazz vibraphonist and drum kit player in Omaha, Nebraska, who created a springtime on Sunday afternoons jazz workshop for about 5 or 6 Sundays in a row that culminated in a concert. And so it was like intro to jazz improvisation that was open to all ages. First, my older sister participated. My dad joined in because he was, still like kind of a self-taught accordionist and really liked jazz. And then as I was like tagging along to these drop-offs at jazz camp or whatever, they said, well, you should come too. And so I got thrown into the mix, again, really young. So anyways, I participated for several years, like every spring for about 5 or so years. Luigi Waits was the organizer of this program. And he was also like a very active jazz vibraphonist. For the most part, he played vibes. Sometimes he played drum kit. And eventually he would he would let me sit in just like for a couple tunes when his band would play at a restaurant or whatever. And over time, those like little dipping of your toe into like the professional world was so formative, because like also in jazz, it's sort of, think on your feet, don't make a face if you play what you think is a wrong note, just those sort of little professionalizing things was so valuable. Eventually, he let me sit in with the band, which they played at this bar every Sunday for 25 years or something. They let me sit in and play way before I was old enough to even enter a bar. So they just said, like, you bring your case and just walk in. Don't look around.
Oh my God.
Don't.
Illegal.
Yeah, illegal. Yes, it was illegal. But like, he was just like, bring your case and just walk directly to where the band is and don't talk to anyone. So, and it was fine. And it was like a comfortable place. Everyone knew each other. So he was making it seem more scary than it was, I think. But in the end, I got to play with them regularly. And even when I would go back home to visit and I would just be a spectator, they would still like not let me just watch. They would make me come and play. And so it was like they dragged me in and encouraged me so much. And I, at the time, you know, eventually I was kind of committed to studying not so much jazz. And so I didn't feel like it was my place anymore, but they still kept dragging me in and like, making me feel a part of it. And, you know, times stretched my abilities where maybe I didn't have, you know, in these settings, the band calls the tunes as they go, and if I didn't have those in my fake book, I'd have to like transpose on site, so, you know, off of the concert book, and like I'd tell them like I don't have that one, and they'd say just play whatever, and they would kind of push me into these like experiences that were just on the verge of uncomfortable and just so never made me feel like a poser, like a jazz poser, which is sort of how I felt a little bit because I wasn't seriously pursuing jazz, and like gave me those opportunities to just play and think on your feet, and
this must have done marvels to your stage presence and to
really
your,
helped.
you know, in a variety. I can imagine that really kind of like being the building blocks of the performance that you are today.
Yeah. Starting with like my family band playing in the nursing home, and then playing in a different kind of public setting in a slightly uncomfortable situation. Yeah, it was formative. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Performance is always a little bit uncomfortable. Otherwise, you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, how wonderful this aspect of the community, you know, being there, like, you know, being dragged into playing. Like, unfortunately, I'm a viola player, you know, by training, so no one dragged me to do any. Aside from the fact that everyone needed a viola player, and so there was, but there wasn't this kind of like community thing, like come and play with us at the bar, you know. I love that kind of like more access, you know, kind of like it seems to me that from the way you're recounting it, very accessible, beautiful, Community for you, like you said quite a bit of. Things about the band and sort of like, but and these people that, you know, really kind of like told you that you were good enough at the right time, and then, you know, also some conversation with your parents. But in terms of the community, what do you want to tell us something about?
I mean, I sang in the church choir as a kid. I played handbells for better part of 12 years in my church. Went from the kids group to the teenagers group to the adult group. I call myself a handbell virtuoso.
Ooh.
I could do 3 in each hand.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
I was that good, and then I lost it all. Okay, anyway. And I think that led to my interest in percussion as well, playing as much percussion. But there wasn't as much community music making. There was so much school. I did so much piano. And when you're a piano player, I mean, I was practicing hours every day, truly. I'd come home from school and didn't always love it, but, you know, 2 to 3 hours through high school, as well as trying to finish. And sometimes I practiced trumpet. I really didn't practice trumpet hardly at all. I didn't have to, right? Being a pianist, I got away with not practicing trumpet, which was fine until it wasn't. And then, you know, I joined, there was a group at Mount Royal College at the time in Calgary that was kind of like a community band, essentially, that was started by the University of Calgary's director. And I just kind of fell into it. My boyfriend was going, so I was going to. And it turned out, because he had that affiliation with the University of Calgary, he called me, was it the next summer, to encourage me to join the symphonic band at the University of Alberta, not knowing I was going to be a music major. I didn't know at the time that I'd gotten in even either. So, but just making that connection ahead of time. And then, you know, to go further down the road, after university, I have played with and conducted community bands almost everywhere I've gone, in Texas, in Chicago, here, in Calgary. That's always been a part of something I do. Brass ensemble. I conducted the Chinese orchestra in Calgary. They needed a conductor. That was my first professional conducting gig, was with instruments I didn't know what they were called. Wow. I didn't know how they were played. A couple of Western instruments joined us to play, but they didn't read music, they read numbers, right? So do, 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 do is 1, 1, 1, 1. So I'm reading a score that has multiple lines of just numbers. And so that was really something to try to figure out. But it led me into a community I never could have imagined that I would have been a part of. And then leading me, you know, this past year I took a trip to China and I'm like, here are all the Chinese ensembles. I know all of these. I've seen these before. Now I see the influence of that. But at the time I had no idea what a great experience I was getting. I just was like, great, I can conduct.
Yeah.
And I was terrible and they didn't care. And, you know, they just needed somebody to keep time, and it taught me kind of fundamental skills in a professional environment, the same thing, where I didn't have to be great at it yet, but it allowed me to kind of learn it. So yeah, community is always, you know, I think if you're not a part of community in some way, sometimes when we get into that professional world, you don't want to go another night, right? One more night of going to band? Well, okay. There's people in my community band who are in 5 or 6 groups. They're busy every night of the week, you know, and they're not professional musicians, but they love it. They just love it. So
I love this. And, you know, while you were talking, what came to my mind was like, what, you know, your major in music, you were studying, well, your major, probably you were getting trumpet lesson, I assume?
Piano.
Piano lesson at the point, at university?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you were kind of like...
I auditioned on both.
All right.
And
Let's go
because the piano professor was a full-time faculty member, now I understand how this all works. The trumpet teacher was not. They put me as a piano major because they wouldn't have to pay for more lessons, right? It's always about money. But I opted to take lessons with the teacher outside, again at Mount Royal College. So I would take a trumpet lesson a week and a piano lesson. And I ended up loving trumpet lessons way more than piano lessons. Hated my piano teacher. And kind of started to resent the piano, honestly, that it just was not fun for me. Everybody around me was way, way better on the piano than I was ever going to be, and I knew that really, really quickly. But I was excelling on trumpet at the same level as all the trumpet majors, and I thought, well, let's make a switch. The university said no. I kind of did an unofficial double major of both instruments all the way through. I did a trumpet recital, I did a piano recital, you know, I did all the things.
Rebel.
And then a conducting recital after that, you know, just trying to cover all the bases.
I wanna ask a question to Allison, but I'm gonna ask you what brought you to conducting. So start thinking about it.
The money.
The fame.
Famous.
Not bad either.
Famous is so ceremonial. Allison, at the risk of, you know, knowing, because you came to university at the University of Alberta, so we cannot talk bad about your teacher because he happens to be in the room. So we need to be not that indiscreet. But can you tell us how it was coming to University of Alberta when you came here? Like, you have here in front of you, you know, how many generations ahead, you know, and they have seen, I'm sure, a very different place than when you got here. Can you give us some glimpses?
Yeah. I thought of coming here when I was studying in Ohio, at Bowling Green State University in Ohio, because some alumni, saxophone alumni, went to Bowling Green to do graduate studies. So I met and became friends with 2 stunning players. I'll just name drop, Aaron Rodgers and Chris Kovlin, which maybe Bill in the back, I'm sure you recall, and you still know them and keep in touch. Anyways, they both came to Bowling Green, and when I was studying there, and that's how I just heard of the school, and over befriending them, and like befriending them, being impressed by them, that's how it first sowed the seed of like, okay, well, this is a place to consider, and I then also met Bill Street at conferences, at the big saxophone conferences. I was like a regular attendee, and as was he. And so that's where we met. And as you all know, he's a very charming person. That is no surprise. And so there you are. And so you made an impression early on. And okay, and then so between Bowling Green and UofA, I studied in Bordeaux, France. And actually where Bill also happened to study there with the former saxophonist. And so when I was there, I was studying with a woman who had taken over. Bill was on my jury of my final degree, of my final recital in Bordeaux. And so that was like another point at which we made contact. And we had I had kind of been sending emails about like the possibility of studying, doing my doctorate. And so we would just kind of, were always intersecting at the conferences, and he was then on like a jury of my degree. And plus I was seeing and interacting with saxophonists who had come from this school who were awesome, who were like the people I looked up to and idolized. So that's why I came eventually.
Yeah, amazing. And you know, people take notes. Is there something you respect a lot that you were inspired by? Network. You know, what did you study? You know, how did you become so incredible? I wanna be you. Kind of like I'm joking, but also not joking. Like you need to be out there, and you know, alumni are a great place to start. You know, and people that have not been much for a long time out of your out of that degree know a lot about what happens right after your degree. Be in touch. You know, be in touch with the people that are a couple of years ahead of you in the program. Write an email, send a text. You know, how did you do this? How did you find that school? You know, there needs to be a little bit of you know, scavenger hunt about like what's happening out there, who is good, who is not, who you might find inspiring or not. Like that's on you. Remember, that's part of being a musician, part of being a music person, someone interested in music study in general. Whether that's, you know, playing an instrument, conducting, being a researcher, being a community musician, being a music teacher. This is really kind of like covers everything, so very important. Now back to what brought you to conducting.
My first conducting class. I just really enjoyed it. I idolized the conductor who was teaching the class. He conducted the wind ensemble. I didn't make it in the wind ensemble because I wasn't a trumpet major. And so I was kind of trying to network, trying to get to know. I had to take the class because I was an education major. But I was really interested to know Dr. Price. That was my impetus to spend time and weasel my way into that wind ensemble. And then there was an ad for a summer program that the University of Calgary was running for conductors, a 3-week, 3-summer fine arts diploma. And I thought, okay, well, Dr. Price is going to be there. I think maybe I would like to learn more about conducting. And I talked to him, and he said, yeah, you should absolutely come and try this out. And I had no idea what I was walking into as a third-year undergraduate student who was so green, with no experience, no anything. And one of the first people that I met was David Maslanka. He was the visiting composer at this first week of 3 weeks. The first conducting teacher that came as a guest was my future teacher, Eugene Corporon. At the time, I had no idea. These names meant nothing to me. I didn't have a clue, you know. At the end of that 3 weeks, I had a clue. I was like, okay, this is what I want. This is absolutely, I will do all 3 summers, and then I will do more. In the process of getting to know Dr. Price, I became his administrator for the program. I organized the band to put them all together. And so over that time, the composers I worked with, Alfred Reed came, Carl Husa came. They had Joseph Schwantner. They had like all of these incredible people. And they came and talked about their music, and then we stood in the evening and conducted their music for them, by the way. Oh, wow. Terrifying. Just like, I did not conduct David Maslanka, I'll tell you that. I avoided his music. As soon as I realized the caliber of human I was dealing with in that moment, I'm like, forget it. I'll just conduct the march, I'm good. It's all good. But that, and the people I met in that program who are now the directors of bands across Canada. Many of those people are the people in the same job that I'm in now, also in the United States. And again, the network of music teachers who came to do this professional development. It was a program unlike any other that's ever existed, to do 3 weeks every summer so intensively with this caliber of people. Wow. And that they all came to me. I didn't have to travel. So you all go and you travel to different places to work with these people. They all came to me. They came to Calgary. Unbelievable. Met my future teacher, Mallory Thompson, there. I got to work 2 summers with her and got to chauffeur her, right? Because Dr. Price knew he could take advantage of me by the time I, weaseled my way in. And I was happy to do it. He gave me his car keys and said, you're going to go pick up all these people at the airport. Wow. So I got one-on-one time with anybody that I wanted to in this program. Incredible. Just incredible. Lucky. And it led to me choosing. I could kind of pick. I'd worked with all these people to say, where do I want to go to grad school? I don't have to go and visit them. Now, Mallory Thompson said, you must come to Chicago. You have to come to my program. I'm like, okay, I'll go to that one. And did that. And she, basically said, what can I do for you? What do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to be you. I want everything you said. And she said, well, I'm not leaving my job. I have since said that to many students here. I'm not retiring anytime soon. But she just gave me all of the advice of, here are the things I think you need to do. She told me, this is the music you need to study. This is the experience that you need to have. I didn't have a ton of conducting experience the first time I met her. The next time I met her, she saw a change. She saw that I had done the things she'd asked me to do, which that was important as well, to show that I actually was very serious about doing the thing. So, yeah. And
wow.
And so I taught in between that too. I was a school teacher. I taught junior high, high school band. It's a varied, that's a long story about all the things, all the places that I taught. The education students have heard it, I think. But, but it led me to go to grad school.
Yeah.
And
I am
to
so
do this.
impressed, Angela. Like, I didn't know some of this, but of your story, what really stayed with me of what you just said is like, you're never too green to put yourself out for something that you're passionate about. Don't think about that. Like, literally, that's your job as a student. Yeah. People want you in the room. It brings a richness. So don't think of yourself any less because you see people around you that are more experienced. People want you to learn. So don't feel bad about that. But also, I love what you said about that these people came to you. And sometimes we talk about Edmonton or the opportunity that we have here is like, oh, I have to go to Montreal, oh, I have to go to Vancouver, oh, I have to go to the state. Sometimes amazing people come here. Yep. My suggestion is make the most of the incredible people that come through these incredible institutions that we work at and the incredible, music scene that is Edmonton. So chat with them, try to find opportunities to see them play, to see them conduct, put yourself out there. Like, that's my suggestion. And, with an example like this, what do we want more? It's so inspiring. Allison, tell me, moments that you put yourself out there, closer to, we're getting more to where you are now. Or maybe, you could say that, something like that. Or maybe some projects that, as you became more and more the professional that you are now, have guided you as a professional, things that have shaped in the past, 5 to 10 years, the musicians and the teacher that you are. Because sometimes Angela is our director of the band conducting program and the director of bands, but you are teaching so many things here at the UofA. I almost sometimes think about you as someone who has a portfolio of things. You are an amazing saxophonist, but also you teach oral skills, you teach chamber music, so you are a coach as much as someone that teaches saxophone. So tell us about your interest and what has guided or how you got into certain things that really made the musician or the music person that you are today.
Okay, yeah. I think the bulk of my performance work is rooted in chamber music, whether that be composed or improvised, and I probably do half and half these days. Improvising or playing composed music. One particular performance that really was new to me was a handful of years ago, maybe 10 years ago, improvising with a dancer.
Oh, wow.
Just solo saxophone and a dancer for the first time. And I've since then played with lots of dancers. So that was the first time of what became a long thing that I continue to do, actually. Working with dance, suddenly I had to consider things like a floor. I'd never thought about the floor that I play on before, or lighting. I don't know how often, maybe classical musicians in general maybe have to consider lighting because it's often either done for you or it's just you get what you get. Anyways, the room, space was something I had thought, I needed to think about in a new way in terms of dance. And improvising while interacting with movement as my partner, as opposed to anything sonic. It wasn't that this dancer was making any sound much more. I wasn't thinking about I only had their movements to interact with and to sort of translate and communicate and like converse with. And so that was suddenly like such an eye-opening experience. And so I've since then played a lot with dancers and improvising in general, like even further, like I'll just sort of focus on my improvising work. So I have played a lot with dancers. I've played a lot with other artists, text-based artists, poets, people who might deliver their poetry orally out loud, visual artists who might be live painting or live drawing. And then most recently, we kind of made it official. We put a name on our group, this group called Echo Radia, which is with a two-person group with myself and Kelly Ruth. Kelly is a textile artist who uses a loom, a weaving loom, but also plays it like an instrument. She puts contact microphones on this big loom and a spinning wheel and has, 10 guitar pedal effects that she uses. So it becomes like quite a spacey, textured, layered instrument that she has. And so she's my improvising partner. We improvise a lot, and I get to think about my improvising. My instrument becomes, I get the luxury, I think, of bringing the melody to the table. And she brings a lot of texture and some rhythm, but mostly it's quite textural. Anyway, so I found working with dance and working with this sort of the most bizarre instrument I ever thought I would play with.
Yeah.
Those have been my kind of more eye-opening moments of my improvising work.
How wonderful. Also,
Yeah.
can you see people, I mean, I am hearing this and I think like there is not one way of being a saxophonist. There's not one way of being a chamber musician. It's really up to you at some point to decide what you want for yourself as an artist or as a music scholar or as a music person to be like. And once you've gone through some education, and education can do up to a point, can direct you towards certain things, but then it's really up to you what you put in your portfolio of various things that you do. Yeah. Angela, an interest or a trajectory or something that you have done recently or that you want to do more in the future, similar to what I just asked to Allison? A value, something that you want to bring to the table.
So this last year on sabbatical, many of you know I spent a lot of time painting. I always thought I wanted to be a painter. No talent, no anything, right? Just, but I imagine myself in retirement painting scenes. That's kind of just, and I've spoken with my husband about it, and he's like, oh, well, when we move and when we go and live here, you'll have all of this time. But I had some time last year and I took online lessons. And what I hope to get out of that, not just the painting and kind of the joy of that piece, but trying to relate that to all artistic mediums, right? That what painters do, what dancers do, what actors do, all of these different ways, how can we relate that to what I do specifically as a conductor? And so it's kind of this presentation that's building in my mind. Maybe it's a shirk, I don't know. Something along that line where I would like to go deeper into some of this. So the other piece I didn't tell very many people, I took a ballet class last year as well. Because I thought I've got to try a little bit of each artistic medium that, I really never did. I was not a dancer growing up. It just wasn't a part of this body, this human being. I'm not the most graceful in general, which is so funny that I'm a conductor now and I use my body. But, and that too, I wanted to see how can ballet play into conducting. Well, here's the bad news. I had a really terrible ballet teacher. I took a class that was called beginner/intermediate ballet. It was very much intermediate with a whole bunch of women who'd been young ballet dancers when they were kids, who all knew all of the positions, all the things. And they just started right in with like the full bar routine. And I'm just like out of my element, having no idea. And she didn't help. She really didn't teach at all. So the other ladies in the class taught me, and they're like, just follow her, do it like that. And I'm just watching people's feet. There was no, like if my arms did anything, it was just instinct. I just wanted to stay and not fall down, and not take the bar down with me because it was a freestanding bar not attached to the wall. Everything that could go wrong, I could see it going wrong. But it doesn't mean that there wasn't still application from what I saw going on in other people. And I still feel like that's another class I want to take, I'd like to take a writing class as well. I feel like I have a lot inside of me for writing that just has never come out. There's just not time, because I think to be a writer you have to write, and I just have not had a whole lot of time to write. So the intersection in that way is kind of what's exciting to me, doing music that has some of that intersection. But I'm still so passionate about what I get to do here that I'm excited that I can pick just about anything and give it to my ensemble, and we try. And whatever that means, we grow no matter what the piece is. There's always something that we can learn. I want to try to find things I've not done yet, and then impart to them things I have done, so that they have the benefit of the time that I've had to live with something, you know. So Holst Suite number 1, it's coming for you. I think when you have those kinds of things that you can share, that's deep within me. What would a painting, and this is a part of the assignment I give for the Holst piece too, is how do you represent a piece of music artistically, or in words, or maybe in dance? You know, some of you have done this assignment already, and that it frees you from the constriction of just trying to analyze what's on a page and then to represent it with your arms, versus how do I take that into the human that I am, the experiences that I have. How could color play into that? How could my feet on a podium, you know, with intention,
about floors,
you know,
right, the floor.
And depending, you know, I wish we had more time to work with different rooms. I always say every time we go to the Windsphere, there's never enough time to learn the room. You know, it's unfortunate that we don't get enough of that kind of space, but
we should take room time, I agree.
Yeah,
because rooms shape so much of how we inhabit them and what we do.
And there's options in there that we've never had to play with. The curtains that can come down, the whole spaceship. It can be higher or lower, and I feel like that will make a huge difference depending on the size of an ensemble as well. And we don't get the luxury of that. It costs money. Everything costs money to go to that extent.
But we can. I think we, thinking about these things, you can do it in the small scale here even. There is exciting things happening in Convocation Hall and Studio 27. That are going to be changed quite a bit and might make us, behave in familiar spaces in different ways. But what I love about what you just said, Angela, is for me is that you keep putting yourself out there. Trying new things.
Trying to be new at something, right?
Yeah. No, but I mean, you're very passionate about it. Both of you are very passionate about what you do, and I love that you've been not just staying there with things that are familiar, but also trying new things and kind of like, how can I have this interest? How can I pursue it? How can I explore it? And yeah, this is something that we all can think about for ourselves. But I think this might be a good time to open the Q&A and kind of like see if there are people in the audience, online and in person, that want to ask questions to our guests. Yes.
I have one. I can go. I was thinking when you were talking, both of you, of course, with Allison, your last things, I've seen you and Kelly Ruth play, and it's awesome. I've seen you conduct, and it's awesome. But this is the thing I always think of with like music cities, is that like, it's almost like there's like dozens of music scenes in Edmonton, and they're kind of the same. It's the same place, but they're all different. So I guess I wonder if you both can comment on Edmonton, what it's like being a musician here, the kind of the best parts, the things where it could grow or change, or either.
Okay, I'll go first. Yeah, I've lived here now like as long as I've lived in Omaha, Nebraska, which feels weird to say, but so I've spent about 17 or 18 years here. Edmonton's music scene, from my point of view, I love it. I had no idea. I came here truly just to study with Bill Street, and the rest was gravy. The rest was extra. Like, wow, I had no idea. Like, so what I've really loved getting to know and be a part of is all the composers that live in Edmonton. I haven't yet really talked about my work with living composers, which is like the other half of my life, and so. Working side by side with composers who are writing for my instrument, and I love that. Being the person who gets to give life to what they put on the page. That's the best for me.
Incredible.
And there's so many composers in Edmonton, which I didn't even know. So like, it's just such a wonderful surprise. And Kelly can attest too, Kelly Ruth, who moved here semi-recently from Winnipeg, says that, exactly, yep. She says that she loves how Edmonton, more than other places she's lived, has a more welcoming DIY atmosphere, that if you want to do something, people are happy to make a little room for you, encourage you, and like cheer you on. And there's an amazing noise scene in Edmonton of people who are so encouraging. And some of those noise musicians came from like the McEwen Jazz program. Some of them came from our program. Some of them are completely self-taught musicians, and they're all mixing it up together, and I love it. And then I would say like New Music Edmonton is a concert society that was my first sort of outside of school major life activity. I was on their board for 10 years.
Wow,
and I was the
I didn't
president.
know that.
Yeah, and I was the president for 3 years, and I actually, before that, I was an employee of theirs for 1 year. I was like a production manager for 1 year right after my degree. They were like my first outside of school music community, and that's how I got to know a lot of composers. That's how I got to know how to like put on shows as a professional. That's how I got to learn the nitty-gritty details of writing grants. I helped write their grants. Anyways, that was a major, large community that helped me then learn about similar communities and pockets of artists in other cities all over Canada, because every big city in Canada has something like a New Music Edmonton, and so we all know each other now. Those are my main pockets of activity that I just love working with those groups of people in Edmonton.
But what fantastic opportunities, people. You know, there are so many exciting things out there. Angela, do you want to say something about
I feel like the community of wind bands in this area is ridiculous, that there are so many places for you to continue playing. So my big story is always telling high school kids, don't stop, that you don't have to come to university, you don't have to play here. You can play here, but look for the opportunity to go sit next to, you know, I reference Dave, the 90-year-old tuba player in my community band who had dementia at the end and would play a piece and then would put his coat on and be ready to go home. And, you know, but Dave sounded great. And for a student to go and sit next to him, what an opportunity. And so to kind of learn what's available, there's so many of these groups that have crossovers. You know, the Mill Creek Colliery Band, they might play a cornet in that ensemble, and then they play trumpet in the Cosmo Band, and then they play in a big band or whatever. There's so many different ways to be a part of band, and it's why these people I was referencing, they might be busy 4 or 5 times a week just because that's their community. They've built that up. And so trying to find that even post-university, not all of you will go on and, you know, have an instant musical place to go. That might be the saddest thing that happens to you is when you leave here. This is such a warm and happy place where you get to do all the things you love, and then we kick you out. And it's like, now what do I do? And I was that kid, so I took a 5th year at the U of C. I'm like, I'm not leaving. I wasn't ready to do my ed degree, so I took my 5th year, and I'd never played in the orchestra. And so I got to play in orchestra for the first time. Things like that, where you have to create those opportunities, but realize how much you are wanted in all of these places. How a lot of places need a conductor that they might not have. You know, the first clarinet player might be conducting just because they don't have anybody, and you want to get that opportunity. Well, go and look for it. There's all kinds of places that need you, or to try out your secondary instruments to get better at that so you're going to be a better teacher. Go and play percussion. Everybody should play percussion. It's just the most fun thing in the world to go and have that experience, and especially for the people who are going to be teachers. And then to make the connections that we talked about earlier, that those connections could lead to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And every time I think about Allison and your career here in Edmonton, you know, you inspire me beyond anybody because you've done so many varied things, and that you represent what's possible. Because we don't need, you know, another saxophone quartet. We have a lot of those. And we don't need a string quartet, and we don't need a brass quintet. Those all exist. What are you all going to bring? You know, you never knew you were going to play with a loom artist,
exactly,
right?
yeah,
or a dancer or whatever.
Totally.
But being open to that possibility, that's an idea that just kind of came to you, and you were open to it, rather than saying, that's weird.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Instead, you went, that's weird.
Yeah, that's weird.
Cool. Let's do that
Yeah.
and try.
Really beautiful.
Yeah.
Other questions for our guests? Yes.
How do you balance all these things? You've done so much, both respectively. Dr. Schroeder's heard many of my questions, but like as someone about to leave the program and you have all these opportunities, how do you make sure you don't get sucked in and like burn out trying to do everything all at once?
I feel like you just have to let it feed you, right? That the things we do are who I am. And so that, I would say it changed, that the idea of balance, as soon as I had a full-time job in a university, that was different. As soon as I was a mother, that was a different thing as well. And so there's different pockets of how I create balance. But I'm busier now than I feel like I've ever been in my whole career with, you know, ensembles or boards or travel or all of the different things. And yet I've never spent maybe so much time trying to work with my own children on their music, right? Mm-hmm. And so trying to figure out what are the pieces of your life that feed you in the moment. When I'm at work, I'm at work. I focus and get as much done here so that I'm not taking it home. As much as possible, I try to not take it to my home. But I have rehearsals, right? And then this last weekend I had 3 days of being away from home. And so you have to realize that it's always going to be that give and take. I caution people about, you know, the life you choose and who you choose to live it with really matters as a musician. Some people make it work with another musician. I don't know how. And so I sing the praises of my husband forever and ever, amen, because he has enabled me to be the musician and parent that I can be by picking up the slack when I'm gone for rehearsal in an evening. I have someone who can take care of the other end. And I know that is not true of everybody. And I know what that means, that our lives are some of the hardest lives. And so I want you to really think about that as you go forward, that as a music teacher, you have to really try to value the time you have in a day and realize that you have to put in extra time. There will always be extra time. And I mean, that's for all of us as musicians too, but as an educator, it's different. The kind of time that you put in is very different. And so understanding I'm going to give it this time, and then I'm going to shut it off. And you must shut it off at some point, right?
Some boundaries are important.
Boundaries is a good word.
Totally.
I don't think I've got that all figured out yet, but
It's work in progress for everyone, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, and it
I
changes, as you said, that, you know, you went from being, you know, when you're looking for a job, you might want to invest a little bit more. When you get a job, then it's like, okay, let's look at something that is healthy, and you know, I need to exercise as well. I need to, I don't know, walk my dog, you know, that kind of things, you know.
Yeah.
Those things are create who we are. Do you want to add something, or?
No, I think that's great.
Covered.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Any other question? Maybe, yes, please, go ahead, Amy.
It's just, sorry, I'm trying to word this. I've been thinking about this year, going, you know, halfway through my second year of university, through this degree, and I've especially noticed this year, there's this overwhelming feeling of like, so many things I want to do in terms of music, in terms of my degree, in terms of composition, saxophone, piano, this and that and everything in between. And I have my whole life ahead of me to do it, and yet there's still just that overwhelming feeling of wanting or having to do it as quickly as possible, or as possible, I guess. So how do you, I guess, counteract that?
Do you want to give it a go?
Yeah, sure. I can say no. So I have 3 degrees. So I've had the Bachelor's of Music student experience, and then a master's degree, and then the time I spent doing my doctorate. My bachelor's degree was it's like a music performance and music education sort of double major. So I felt maybe like you that I had a million things to do, and so much coursework. Yeah. Then I mean, I'm not saying the answer is do 3 degrees, but I am saying the bachelor's degree was maybe the busiest I'd ever been and have ever been. In terms of like time. I've never had enough time. So I'm just saying it's temporary, and it's not, if you were to stay in school, if you were to get further degrees, they're not all the same. They won't all feel like that. And I guess that's it. This won't last forever, this time period, which is good and bad. It won't last forever, but it's not always going to be this busy. And then like when you have free time, maybe in a couple of years, I mean, when you graduate, that's when you, maybe that's when the rubber hits the road of like self-motivation, which that can be like the opposite side of the coin of like your problem right now is like, I never have enough time because everyone's telling me what to do. But when they're done telling you what to do, it's like, what? So self-motivation, that's when I think, know that that's coming. And maybe you can practice self-motivation with little things right now. Like I know you're doing currently, you have some things on the go, self-motivated projects. So think of that in your near future and practice it or plan for the fact that not everyone's going to tell you what to do pretty soon.
Well, and that maybe with time it becomes more streamlined that, I had piano and trumpet and conducting and then teaching and all the things. And at some point, something had to give. You can't do all of those things. I had a huge teaching studio when I was an undergrad. And that put me through school, which was great, but it took up hours of my life during the school year. Now, I got my summers off more or less because I worked all year to get that done. And I tell people that's the smartest money you'll ever make because you can charge money, right? But at a certain point, you have to decide, I can't keep up my piano skills. I cannot keep up my trumpet chops. And I need to focus on score study, that this is just what I have to spend my time doing. It becomes more clear where you're going to direct that energy into what's most important. All the things you do will play into that, certainly. And you can keep doing, I kept playing trumpet. I didn't practice trumpet. I played trumpet in many ensembles and only practiced when I had to make sure that I didn't humiliate myself. But at a certain point, it was all about, I'm now a conductor. That's what my focus is. I'm going to grad school for this specifically. So hopefully it comes to that point. That you don't feel so squirrel about all the things because we're giving you all the things. That's the point of this degree.
I was about to say, education, at this point should feel a little bit like that. You're trying a bunch of things, before you decide, I want to focus more on this, conducting, or composition, but if you haven't tried yourself on the small scale, how would you know? So that sounds...
But also trying to please every master in your life.
Exactly.
At the university. We understand that everybody has demands depending what it is. You have to get your theory done by this certain time. And we have a concert at this time. And so the pressure comes in those bursts of this one has to happen and this one has to happen. It will not always be that way.
No.
And honestly, like we've been talking about this as a faculty this week. Secretly, we want breadth of education for you. And we know that even though we put pressure on you to accomplish your repertoire for band and your scales for my lessons and your theory assignments and history stuff, we do know that none of us thinks that our stuff is the most important. I feel like no one in the faculty thinks that. We all know that you need to allocate, sometimes unevenly, your goals. And we're actually working on that right now.
To make that even smoother. And I think this is a great place to stop, but not before having thanked my two guests that really made us, inspired us and told us so much about themselves, and we're also vulnerable, and I really appreciate that. So thank you so much. My pleasure. And please join us for a sandwich, a glass of wine, any of other drinks that you want.
Hey. All righty.
Let's unhook.
Unhook.